Hey everyone, I'm super excited to talk to you today about how I did this Heston table dupe, which is from Restoration Hardware. When I started the project, it was $1,725, I wanna say, for the Heston coffee table, but now it's listed at $1,845, so of course everything's getting more expensive. But either way, an expensive coffee table. And this one I was able to do for $81 total. And I'm gonna walk you through the whole thing. This exploded on Instagram. Like, people were so excited about this, which is awesome. So I'm gonna just walk you through how I did it. It ended up being pretty simple. I wouldn't say there was anything that was super hard. The hardest part for me was getting the concrete super smooth. But other than that, I would say it's a pretty straightforward project and probably anybody could do it. So let's hop into it. Okay, here's the table that I got for $35 on Facebook Marketplace. It's literally the perfect shape. I needed to know if it was wood or not. The look of it was kind of confusing, so I just sanded into it to find out. And obviously it is. You can see right here that it's real wood all throughout, which is a total score, because it means that, first of all, the table will be worth more, but also I can strip it down and get it to a light wood color, which is more of the look I was going for. So here I am just going in with some citrus strip to try to just strip off that top seal, and also to get it down to the lighter wood color if possible. I let it sit on there for about 30 minutes before I scraped it off just to see, and you can tell that it has taken off that top layer, but it hasn't really stripped down the wood that well, like I would have wanted it to if I were sanding it instead. So the next thing I thought I would try is to put down the citrus strip and then cover it in saran wrap and let it sit for hours. I think the longer it can stay wet, the better it does. So I'm giving it a lot of time right here to really lift that seal and hopefully the stain as well. Obviously, if I don't have to go and sand this whole table down, that would be great, which is why I'm trying to do it with the citrus strip before I decided if I was actually going to cover it in concrete. We know that I'm going to cover the top part of the table in concrete, but I wasn't sure of that in this moment, and so the way that I was trying to decide is by actually sanding and stripping the top of the table to see what it would look like just as raw wood. But if you are sure that you're gonna cover it in concrete, then you definitely don't need to strip the top of the table down to real wood. You could just do it on top of this. I would say probably sand it down just a little to give the concrete something to grip to, but honestly, you don't need to spend all the time sanding and stripping the top of the table. I'm a sucker for this natural wood look, and so I was having a hard time imagining actually covering it in concrete, but I'm glad I did in the end. Okay, if you're ready for a moment of truth, I'm going to be honest on this citrus strip. I do not think that it was worth it. I think it maybe made it a little easier to get down to the natural wood, but honestly, I want it to work like I scrape it off and it turns to that natural wood color, and that's that. But I still had to go in and sand quite a bit, which to me defeats the purpose. You can see right here how hard I have to work to get it down to that, which it's better than sanding. It's definitely helping, but like, holy cow, that's a lot of work. So to me, I would have saved the $13 and just sanded from the beginning. Also, citrus strip is pretty messy. It's sticky. You're not supposed to get it on your hands. It gets everywhere. So I just don't know how much easier it made this project for me. Here I am just sanding down the rest. You can tell it does come off pretty easily and gets down to that natural wood color right away. So the citrus strip did make that a little bit easier, but what's the trade-off? And here I am forgetting my phone outside for a long time. Forgetting I was recording, still forgetting. I forgot I was recording. So here it is, stripped down to the natural wood, and honestly, I'm obsessed. But this is way too cool of a project to stop there. So here I am just laying some drywall tape down on the wood. This basically just gives the concrete something to grip to. I was worried how it would go on the edges, but it was actually pretty easy. I just laid it down along the edges and then trimmed off the excess so that there wasn't really anything extra sticking out. Here I am mixing the concrete. I made a huge mistake and I tried to mix a big batch and I actually followed the directions on the box. Do not do that because it turned into one giant rock before I could even kind of get it mixed in on the table. So I would say work in smaller batches. A little goes a long way, and mix it so that it's maybe peanut butter consistency, like a creamy peanut butter. I wouldn't recommend following the directions on the box, and from what I'm reading from other DIYers, they kind of say the same thing. I do think that going with a little bit of a smoother consistency as opposed to how thick it's saying to do it on the box, when it's a little thinner, it just gives you more ability to keep the top of the table very smooth. I think if I had started off with it peanut butter consistency, that the table would have been quite a bit smoother and I wouldn't have had to do as much sanding at the end. Like, look at the consistency of this. This is like playing with sand. This is what the box said to do. And I never even got this part on the table because it literally turned into one giant rock. So here's the consistency that I came up with, and I would say that this is still too thick. If I could go back, I would have done this first layer quite a bit smoother. You can see I really have to work to get it into the table. It still has more water in it than what the box called for. So that's what I mean by maybe don't follow the box instructions. Okay, this right here is the perfect consistency. It really lets you put the concrete on very smoothly and gives you a lot more control. It's also, you can just tell it just goes on nicer. So aim for that consistency. I think if I could have done that throughout the whole table, that it would have been much easier in the end. I wouldn't have had to sand as much and things would have been smoother all around. Another trick I learned after the fact, and once I'd posted on Instagram and gotten a lot of comments, is that people say you can go in with a damp sponge about 30 minutes after this is set on the table, and then you don't end up with these ridges like you can see here that I ended up needing to sand down. But this is what it looks like after the first coat, which is pretty good, but you can still see some of the drywall tape underneath, which will cover up, and we will have to sand off all those ridges. Truly, I think you can avoid those ridges by having the concrete just be peanut butter consistency and also wiping it down with a damp sponge after it's set for about 30 minutes. I really think that would help, and I just didn't know any of that stuff. I'm doing the trial and error, so you don't have to. So you definitely should wear a mask when you sand concrete, which is why you see me put my face in my shirt. I had a mask somewhere around there, but I guess I just didn't feel like going to get it. And here goes the second layer of concrete. Then I sand it again, and here's the third coat going on. So you can see when I sand that those top ridges are not really going away and they're getting turned to a darker color, which just was driving me crazy. So here I am just getting it a little bit wet before I go through and sand again, and I found that this worked so well. So if you find yourself with some ridges that are just like not going away, this is the way to go. I wouldn't get it super wet, but it is very effective. I was worried that the drywall tape would show through, and it really didn't anywhere except for just right here on this edge. So here I am just reinforcing that edge, covering it up again. So now I'm just wiping down all of the dust, getting it nice and clean, and then I'll seal it here with polyurethane. I like the spray, but they also have it in a paint can. And then I'm going to seal the concrete with some outdoor concrete sealer. I think it works for wood and brick as well, but super hardy, and I loved how this ended up turning out. It really made that concrete seem indestructible, kid-proof, all the things. The only thing I would say here is I wish that I'd done really even strokes and worked quickly so that you wouldn't end up seeing any of these brush strokes. You know you're done with the sealing when you pour on the concrete sealer and it doesn't change to a darker color. That means that it's officially sealed. And here is the final look. I'm obsessed with it. I sold it for $385 after putting in $81. Okay, the restoration hardware version of this table retails for almost $2,000. So I would say the person that bought it for $385 got a screaming deal. Such a cute look, but also very exciting to me that was a pretty good profit. If you liked this video, if you found it interesting, if you think you'll try it, leave me a comment or subscribe and like this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.